It just sounded really good, too good to be true, and it was. I want to welcome you to one of the first episodes of Hybrid Sessions, and I'm super excited to start this out finally. Today's episode is going to be on birth control, specifically the Mirena IUD. As I mentioned previously, I know a lot of people have had good experiences with it, but I want to talk about my experience. I want to warn people before they get into it without knowing what exactly it is, and kind of without research. I want to advise people not to do such a thing. And hopefully the quality is good and everything. This is my first time using this camera, so bear with me on that. So I'm going to go ahead and start a little background on my birth control history. Growing up, my mom kind of didn't believe in that. She was a very traditional Mexican woman, so her thing was, you're not going to be on that, because if you're on that, then it automatically means you're sexually active. With me, I really wanted to start birth control because my periods have always been heavy and my cramps were really bad, and I had heard that that would help. But again, like how I said, my mom was very traditional, still is very traditional. She was not the type to be like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and go get you on birth control right now. So bringing that up was not even in the question. I remember one appointment specifically, we were discussing that because I think I was like, I don't know, 16. My doctor was just telling me that I should get on it. My mom was arguing that I don't need to be on it because I don't need to be, wow, that hair has been in my face the whole time. My mom was just arguing the whole time that I didn't need birth control because I was not sexually active. If I ended up being active, then it would have been my responsibility for whatever had happened after that. That's how she was on that. I do have an older sister, basically the same thing with her. I remember a lot of times she went, I don't want to say behind my mom's back, because honestly it's not like a bad thing that she was looking out for herself in that way, that she was getting herself medication, but it just sucks that it had to be like hidden or behind my mom's back, so to speak, for her to get the medical care that she needed or whatever. So I do remember my sister having the birth control pills and stuff. I never really knew how they worked or anything, but I knew that's what it was. Anyways, yeah, birth control was not like a thing in my home. Sex talk was not a thing in my home. It was like, you better not end up pregnant, and that's it. I mean, if you have access to no other form of birth control, at least try and use condoms, not just to prevent pregnancy, but STDs and STIs. You really want to take care of yourself, especially if you're having multiple partners, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just be smart about it. Even if you have one partner, I suggest both of you get tested and you just stay on top of that. It's very important for you to stay on top of your sexual health, I guess you can say. I feel like the sex education system here, it's really not how it should be. Being on the internet, I come across a lot of things, and it's really crazy to see how people just don't know their bodies. People don't know how their bodies should be functioning and not everyone's gonna know what's normal or whatever, but there's some things that are common sense. Also, I want to add that my mom never we never talked about a period or anything like that. Like, it's possible to be conscious about your sex health and sex education without having a parent, like your own parent, telling you. I feel like at a certain point you're old enough to be held responsible to educate yourself, especially if your elders are not doing so for you. You really need to educate yourself, for your body, all of that stuff. Don't ever just sit back and let people tell you what it should be or what you should know, because you're not going to know everything, and everyone doesn't know everything, so you need to go out there and learn some for yourself. But anyways, I'm going on a whole tangent here. My camera's probably going to die soon. Let me get started with the actual story that I'm trying to get into, the Mirena IUD. And the other day I was trying to look on my Twitter, because I remember specifically talking to a few people on there about how I was getting it, and then towards the end when I was excited to get it removed because it was horrible. I ended up getting on birth control mid-2015. So like I said, prior to that, never been on birth control, never tried, never anything. I was completely new to it. I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't researched any brands. I didn't know what I needed for myself. So I kind of just went off of what my doctor told me. And I wish I had not done that, because yes, we can trust our doctors, but always do your research no matter what. I got it in November 6, 2016. And at first I had started with minimal spotting. Yeah, day of, when I left from the procedure, I was bleeding. And it was for a while, but they were terrible cramps. I'm used to bad cramps because my period is like that. I don't have easy periods at all. I have really bad cramps from like second to third day, and I last about like 7 days. Less on a good week, when the good Lord is good to me. But yeah, so my periods are nothing light, they're not exciting, they're not quick and easy. Like I said, I had started with the spotting, and they told me that after a while it would go away, that I wouldn't have periods, that I wouldn't have cramping. It just sounded like really good, too good to be true, and it was, at least for me. Let me just walk you through the day. I remember going in after we had discussed it, and another thing I didn't like was the way my doctor was talking to me about it. I had turned 21 like 2 months after I had my son. I know that's still pretty young. I would say it's young. So I guess I can understand why she was looking at me that way, but at the same time, it's like, what are you doing? You're a doctor. You need to grow up and be mature about things. Also, another thing, side note, she delivered me, so I feel like she felt, I don't know, some kind of, I don't even know what you would call it. Like, she kind of overstepped her boundaries to me, I feel. I just think it was wrong the way she handled things too. She was very like condescending towards me and my husband, and it was obvious that it was because we were young. Anyways, speaking to her about the birth control, this was not the first doctor that I mentioned that I spoke to that was trying to convince my mom to get me on birth control. It's another doctor, my gynecologist or whatever. This doctor, after I had my son, she told me, what are your plans for birth control? And I explained to her, previously I had never been on birth control, so I wasn't sure what would be good for me. And we discussed that I do get migraine. She told me that I probably wouldn't be able to get on the pill. But also, before she told me that, another reason why she said that I probably wouldn't be able to be on the pill was that I was too young and that I was gonna forget to take it. That was her excuse. And I told her, like, what about if I put a schedule or like an alarm or something on my phone? She was like, no, you're too young, you're gonna forget. So I didn't like that, but I was like, okay, well, she's a doctor, she should know. She does this. Then she like I said about my migraines, she suggested I needed something that didn't have estrogen. And see, I'm saying everything that she told me, so if anyone else knows any different, please let me know in the comments. I want to know if she was telling me something wrong or whatever. I still don't know all the research on it or anything, but I'm just speaking from my experience, from what happened to me and just how I felt throughout the whole thing. She suggested the IUD. So I got that one put in, and the day of, it was weird. She told me to take Tylenol before I went in again, and to make sure not to forget because it would help with the discomfort, and that didn't help at all. The procedure, I actually saw in another video, someone was saying that you're actually supposed to be put to sleep when you get that procedure done, or some type of anesthesia or something to help with the pain, that it's not just supposed to be a quick little thing. It's an actual surgery, considered an actual surgery. In my case, like I said, she just advised me to take Tylenol. I showed up. They told me to go use the restroom and then just wait in the room. The girl told me, it was like, you're not going to gain any weight. You're not going to have periods. You're not going to have cramps. It's going to be amazing, blah, 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 Then my doctor came in and she's like, are you ready? We ended up, it's kind of like a pap smear situation. They said it's going to be a little pinch. It was not a little pinch. I would describe it as a pinch, but it was not little in any way. It was pretty painful. I remember kind of like flinching. Prepping you for the IUD is basically like a pap smear, the whole thing. It's very uncomfortable. It lasts, I don't know, I don't want to say it lasts a long time, but for me it took a while. Like, she was there for a little bit. I don't know if there was complications or like if it takes that long. After that, you immediately have cramps. Like, it just feels uncomfortable in your like pelvis area. After she inserted it, she told me to go use the restroom and to apply a pad because I would be spotting or just any type of bleeding. And so I did that. I was like, okay, hopefully they're telling me the truth. I'm not gonna have a horrible period anymore. But like I mentioned before, I ended up having spotting. I don't remember exactly how long the spotting went on. I have this conversation with someone about the IUD, and I said I had just gotten it on November 6th. Okay, this was like days later, maybe like 2-3 weeks later from when I had initially got it put in. I was saying that I had minimal spotting, and then out of nowhere I had my period, had the worst cramps. Okay, yeah, so that reminds me. Like I mentioned my period before, I've always had bad cramps no matter what. For the first 2 to 3 days, it's the worst. When I was younger, I couldn't really even, well, now to this day, I struggle to do things on my first few days, but I try to take it slow. I'm actually still trying to go to a doctor to see if it's normal, but back in the day it was so bad that I would have to like just sleep it off or stay in bed and be curled up in bed. That's how bad my cramps were. I was used to that, but for this, the Mirena IUD, it gave me horrible cramps, and I'm not even playing. For the 6 months that I had this in, I had cramps non-stop every single day. My cramps were so bad. I remember it would bounce from the left side to the right side, where it would be like the worst. I would have pain all across, but one side would be hurting me more. And I remember a lot of times it was my right side, so I was thinking maybe it was like leaning to the right or something, or it was like lodged into my uterus or something. I just thought it was lodged in there because I had read stories, watched videos about, you know, the complications with an IUD after I got it done, which was very dumb of me. I saw that, so then that began to make me worry because I started to get the pain more on my right side more than anything. And it was so bad to the point that I would end up shaking, so unbearable. My legs would shake, my legs would go numb. I would start shaking. It's like, have you ever been so cold that you just can't control your body? You just start shaking. It's basically like that. That's how painful it was for me. And I remember calling all the time to the doctor saying like, hey, these are my symptoms, this is what's going on, what can I do? Can I get this taken out? And every single time they would always tell me, well, your body needs to adjust to it, you need to give it some time. So there I was like a pendeja waiting, just waiting, because that's all they would tell me is, oh wait, give your body time, you've never had birth control before, you need to get used to it. You had a baby, you need to get used to it, like stuff like that. Always just blowing me off, brushing me off. And it was so irritating because, I mean, think of it, like you're in pain, you don't know what's going on, you've never had something like that before. Your body went through something major, like a major change. It's all new. And even at that, after a baby, most women have postpartum depression. I feel like this is like another side note, but I've always dealt with like depression and stuff like that growing up. So after having the baby, I felt like it was even more intense, and then having to deal with all of this other new stuff and doctors not listening and everyday pain and things like that. It was just a lot, and it was more, I dealt with more than what should have came with that. I've heard amazing stories that, oh, it lasts for 5 years, they never have complications, and that they don't have periods, no cramps, and this and that. I also started to wonder if it had anything to do with my ovaries. I usually get cysts on my ovaries, so I was wondering if that had anything to do with the pain. Maybe it had gotten stuck somewhere. So that was the case with that. For many months, I was just calling them, asking them to please take it out, and every time they were just telling me just to wait. So I ended up even looking around with other doctors to see if they could remove it for me, and they were telling me that I couldn't get it removed because they didn't give it to me. So I needed to go with the same person that gave me the IUD. So I waited, like I said, I waited 6 months for my body to get used to it. I never got used to it ever. I was bleeding throughout the whole time. And it was not no light periods, like I said. It was heavy, very heavy, all the time. Cramps very bad. I had mood swings. I felt bad, just like I felt, and I don't know if anyone else feels this. I don't know if it's because I have anxiety also, but I felt whenever I had that in, I felt like I knew I had something in my body, you know what I mean? Like a foreign object, something that should not be in there. I always just felt like it was wrong. Like, I don't know. And it wasn't even the whole like birth control thing with my mom or the way I grew up. I knew it wasn't that. I knew it was the fact that it was just something completely foreign. It just made no sense to me that would be okay to be inside the body. And like I was saying, I never really did the birth control thing other than like condom. But nowadays, I'm still not on birth control. My only form of birth control is condoms, and I keep track of my periods. And that's another way you can keep track of your cycle by writing down your symptoms and the days that you get, like if you were cramping, headaches, anything like that. I like to use the app Clue to keep track of my periods and just the way that my cycle is completely, and it helps me kind of base myself off of like where I need to be careful and everything. Of course, that's not the easiest thing for everyone. Some people have irregular periods, so I agree that it's not something that everybody can use, but I think it's something that you should definitely look into if you're not into the whole birth control thing or you're just using condoms. I would suggest to start kind of monitoring your cycle. I guess the main thing is don't be naive, don't be dumb, do your research. Don't just go off of that one opinion somebody has and try and advocate for yourself. I just hate that my camera kept dying this whole time because I was getting into the conversation and then that thing would just shut off. So hopefully the next episode is going to be better, but actually just kidding, I know it's going to be better. I have a lot of fun stories and things to share, and I have a lot of things planned for the next episode. I just got to sit down and film them and everything, so we will get into that soon.